Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Simon Noble, and he's the CEO of Cezanne HR. And Simon and I are going to talk about transforming HR and payroll from a cost center to a performance engine. Before we get into the detail, Simon, can you tell people where they can get hold of you?
Yeah, so probably LinkedIn's the easiest. I have quite a profile on LinkedIn, so you'll be able to search me there. But also the Cezanne HR pages as well. I'm connected on that front too. But if in doubt, the CezanneHR.com website will definitely point you in the right direction.
Excellent. So before we dig into the talking about transforming HR and payroll from a cost center to a performance engine, why don't you just give people a little quick thumbnail sketch about who you are and what you've done and why you're here?
For sure. So the first thing to say, I am not a HR professional, so talking about these kind of things, you sometimes feel a little bit of a fraud in that respect, especially when I often share a stage with someone who is. But my background has been in technology for the last 20, well, nearly 30 years, in fact, from organizations like Oracle and SAP, but more latterly, mainly in the HR technology space. And so I must have spent well over a decade in that area talking to senior HR and people professionals and business leaders about how they operate and how technology helps them.
So, Simon, HR and payroll is often viewed as a department of no or a necessary tax on the business. In your experience, what is the biggest single psychological barrier preventing these teams from seeing themselves as strategic players?
I think, yeah, the dumping ground that they get is really a challenge in terms of how they handle those sort of things. You tend to find nobody really thinks about payroll until it goes wrong, yet it's the biggest point of trust
Yep.
that you can build in an organization. So the contract is I do work, you pay me, and if you get that wrong, the trust is broken. So it's never really considered, and it's only thought about if something goes wrong and you have that. Whereas HR seems to be the dumping ground for everything that is seen as potential failing or weakness in their leadership and their management structures. So the common ones are things like, HR own culture, right, or morale, and it's like, well, no, that's never going to be that kind of thing. So they're often seen in a negative perspective from those lenses straight off the bat. The other part is because of that, they don't always get the investment they need to put the things in place to support them, and therefore they're administratively heavy. And therefore, most of their time is not about thinking about how they can elevate the business or how they can improve performance. It's about how they keep on top of the growing mountain of administration that's put in front of them.
Many teams are so buried in manual data entry and firefighting they can't see the horizon. How does a leader begin to automate the mundane without losing the human touch that HR requires?
So automation doesn't necessarily mean you lose control.
Yeah.
And I think, and there's the old thing of, if you automate chaos, you just get faster chaos in terms of those kind of things. So, this is where, the HR playing the role of human middleware needs to really be removed. Anything that is a rekeying, anything that is moving one thing to another, the copy and pasting. The classic is systems from a HR and payroll and not having them connected, which is still a very common occurrence today, unfortunately. You're creating that completely unnecessary admin within the two areas. And I think whilst you are burdened by that, you're never going to be able to think about things beyond it and start elevating that conversation and start having an impact on the business in a performance way. And it is very much if you data isn't connected, then it's going to be incorrect and it's not going to be trusted, and therefore leadership don't value what you're sharing in that context. So removing the human from that perspective, connecting those data points and having reporting that people trust is table stakes in terms of getting a seat at the table.
You talk about moving from a cost center to a performance engine. What does aligning to business strategy actually mean? And what does it look like in practice for payroll on a Tuesday morning?
Um, so, I mean, that's a great question. If it was easy, everyone would do it and it'd be fine, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But there's a lot of small considerations. First of all, HR getting to a place once they've been able to free themselves from the chains of the administration that they're dealing with, is really understand what's driving the business, understand the language that's used at an exec level and aligning themselves to that. Thinking about what is it that's going to move the needle from a strategic delivery point of view. So rather than going, right, we're dealing with outputs in terms of we've got to get a lot of tickets done, we've got to get a lot of we've got to process payroll elements, we've got to do all sorts of things that just, these queries about how many holidays I have left. They're just things that happen and take up a lot of time. But really understanding, well, what is the business trying to achieve? How is that articulated, and how is the business trying to deliver against that strategy? And what are the barriers to success? The moment that HR really understands that, the moment it can start having an impact. And the moment, because HR and pay can touch just about every element of an employee journey, and should touch every element of an employee journey. And so the ability to have that impact becomes quite clear once you understand what is the business trying to do from a strategic point of view and where are the barriers to success. If you're going in with a solution, an outcome of, hey, we can fix that, we know how to deal with that, then you quickly get into a very different conversation with the executive or the C-suite.
When we were having the preparation call, Simon, I remember you talking about how it's so important that people actually see this, HR and payroll managers see this as a that they need to do this process of raising their profile and being strategic and getting in tune with the business, and before there's ever any conversation about system change, because the system, while people may thinking I need a new system, until people actually recognize it's a strategic platform, people aren't going to go and say I'm going to spend a whole load of money on changing the IT systems.
No, we've done a bit of work in terms of previously about creating business cases for IT systems. We're a system provider. We want people to be successful at buying systems, but that's almost an irrelevant point until you understand the problem you're trying to solve in the first place.
Yeah.
And you can only do that when you're talking to those business leaders who have a challenge or a limiter in terms of what they're trying to deliver. Understanding that in their language and understanding the things that impact that enable you to have a conversation that say, hey, we know how to solve that problem. What's that worth? What's that worth to the business? And it's, a fairly typical thing of, yeah, we can say, hey, look, we need our data to be more connected. We need to remove administration. It's like, yeah, so does everybody else. But what value does it bring? If you can turn around and talk to, a hiring manager and talk to about, what's the cost of an employee leaving, and their time to productivity is the biggest killer in terms of their ability to actually get to real value. And you can show them how to reduce that by ensuring that you're hiring better talent, that you're onboarding them in a more effective way, and you're getting them skilled up at a faster pace, then that starts to, and that's just one element, right? That starts to create strategic value in terms of what you're able to deliver, and genuinely solves a problem that a leader or a hiring manager is going to have, to the point that they see you now as a business partner and a solution to their problems, and your engagement becomes very different.
You've mentioned that HR and payroll hold the most sensitive and vital data in a company. How can professionals leverage this trusted platform status to influence C-suite decisions rather than just reporting on them?
So We mentioned a minute ago in terms of when you're on systems like this that we're doing the podcast on. My concern is my laptop's locked down pretty harsh, so it's
Yeah.
sometimes difficult. We've got to be really careful with the data of our customers. We've got to be really clear in terms of how we protect it, and and the accuracy and the process around that is really needs to be fairly key. But that applies across the board. So the data element and that security, and that's a trust element that people have with us. A leader in a business has to trust that HR's data is right, it's accurate, it's protected, and it's going to give them insight in terms of what happens across their business. And that could be when they're looking at elements of where do we perceive churn to happen, how do we avoid that churn, how do we identify areas of skills or capability that we lack, and how do we fill those? When they come into the data, they need to know that it's available to them, it's accurate, and it's representative of what happens. And that's how you get trust. If the data's not right, and they go, well, that doesn't look like my organization, or that data's missing elements, then that's quite critical from a loss of faith in what you're doing. Pay is the same kind of element in terms of if you want to create an environment where you're rewarding people in the right way, and you're either giving bonuses or you're commissionable or you're trying to reward the right kind of behaviors. If you get that wrong and you're not doing that in the right way, again, it's a lack of trust from the business, different level and different perspective, but they're both losing faith in the system. So the accuracy of that and the compliance around that has to be stand up to quite a decent level of scrutiny to be able to build trust and build confidence in the data that you've got.
Payroll is usually judged by 100% accuracy, which is a zero error game. How do we shift the internal KPI from no mistakes to value added to the employer experience?
So I'll touch on that in terms of partly what I've just said, which goes, yes, everybody wants their salary in their bank account with the right amount on the right date. That's a given, and really that should be table stakes. And the thing with a lot of payroll professionals is people only know them when something's gone wrong, and that's never a great experience. But when you look at it, it should be thinking about reward and how do we create a compensation package that is going to reward the right behaviors. It's going to engage our employees from a welfare, both mental, physical, financial welfare. It's going to engage them in how they interact with us as a business, because that should be a lever for retention. That should be a lever for motivation, and it should be something that drives the right behaviors and aligns to your cultural values in a way that just having a pay slip, doesn't really excite anybody. But thinking about a workforce that's motivated and looked after and compensated in other ways that creates alignment with the business, that's a very powerful thing.
Why is the manual way of doing things not just slow, but actively dangerous for a company's growth and culture in 2026?
With the best in the world, even if you're really good at your job, you're going to make mistakes. And in an area that has zero mistakes as a baseline requirement, that's not good. Manual error checking of payrolls is something that should not happen anymore, right? In terms of we should be using technology, we should be using systems to improve that, to make sure that we are checking the checker, not doing the checker ourselves.
Yeah.
Same thing with compliance. Is HR still has the, part of their role is to protect the employee and to protect the business in terms of to remain compliant, and it's only when it goes wrong do you realize that there's a value in the HR world from that perspective as well. So I think systems and tools help you make sure policies are correct, make sure your processes are adhered to, make sure you have consistency in the way you execute, and all of those things align to getting to that position of 100% compliance, 100% accuracy. If you have that systemized, then you are able to deal with other areas in terms of the business. That business partnering perspective that I mentioned earlier of helping develop the leadership. We're a growing business, right? We're 150 people. We've doubled in size over the last couple of years. And like any organization, we want to invest more in the capability of our management and our leadership. You promote people to be a leader, and often you don't have the capability to train them how to be a leader. They know how to do the job they were doing, but not how to lead the business. HR is not the pseudo nanny for managers, right? But they are the organization that should create the framework that they should follow.
Yeah.
So making sure that you have a leadership team that understand their responsibility, how to execute against that, and to do it consistently across the piece. That's where HR can again drive value and really help an organization develop.
For an HR director who isn't tech savvy, what are the first 3 steps to auditing their current tech stack to see if it's an engine or an anchor?
Okay. I think before that, I'd look at the process.
Okay.
I think before you start digging into the technology, you put your business analyst hat on and say, what are we trying to do and how do I simplify it? Because like I said, automating chaos just gets faster
Yeah.
chaos. It's what are the things that we need to do from a process? And then when you reflect that onto your systems, you're looking at that and saying, are they connected? Am I having to take steps that duplicate effort along the way? Is my data in one place so I can report on it in a simple manner? And are there efficiencies or optimizations I can create? But unless you're looking at it from the beginning perspective of what's my process and how do I make that clean, it's difficult to see, because you might look at one system and go, yeah, it's great at this, or another system, it's great at that. But if they don't talk to each other and they're not connected and you don't see the process through, you're going to create inefficiency, and you're going to have a lack of transparency on the data that you're dealing with.
So how do you prove to a skeptical CFO that investing in a better HR payroll system actually impacts the bottom line and the long-term business resilience?
The first thing again is talk to them in their language. They know the numbers and they know where they need to be from a business strategy and
Yep.
execution perspective. So the first thing I'd be looking at is, what do they see as the costs that they're incurring that they feel is unnecessary? What do they feel are the risks in the business that they're trying to mitigate? And it's going to be about, how are we hiring the right talent? There was a stat that we were talking about the other day, which the average hiring time of a person is about 44 days, and that's not bad. Problem is, the top tier talent is often off the market in 10.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that you're getting the right talent and the right people that align with your culture and values, but have the skills and capability, and getting the best in class there? That makes a huge difference. The better your team is, the better your performance is going to be. How do you get them into the business quickly and get them up and running and effective and managed in a way that they can then develop? So those are frameworks, and those are things that if they're seeing it where you hire someone and it's taking you 90 days to make them productive, a CFO is going to understand why that's not a great thing, and that it'd be much better to have them productive in 30 days. His cost to ramp is falling through the floor as you talk to him. The other element is, and it's always a leadership and a development, some of your best people leave because of lack of opportunity. Some of your best people are going to be frustrated because they get trapped in a role and they can't move forward. So having systems that say, we need strong leadership, we need our talent to rise, and it's that, how do you let that cream of your organization move through the ranks and have that? And so if you can talk to your CFO and say, we can make sure that the meritocracy that we want to have in our business truly happens, and we don't block people because we identify them through proper performance systems, then he knows he's going to have a better leadership, he's going to have better capability at the top of the business, and ultimately that will link back to performance. And if you're having the dialogue there, then I would be surprised if a CFO didn't understand the value or understand how to put real metrics against that.
So last question, Simon, because we're pretty much up at the 20 minutes,
Okay.
and it's one of about looking into the future. If every HR and payroll department successfully made this transition tomorrow, how would the global employee experience look different by next year?
Wow. So how would the employee experience look different? Um, I think there'd be a number of things from an employee perspective. I think for me, finding a role, being onboarded, and getting up and running quicker would be a much more seamless experience, and I think that would be a huge element. Bringing people into the business is one of the hardest things, but when I'm there, I'd find that I'm looked after with the right benefits. I have a clear trajectory of where I can go in my career. I'm trained to be able to support that, and I feel that I have potential and access to the right people to develop myself and my career as we go forward. Um, and I'm rewarded in the right ways for doing it. And I think, all of those things help me connect and help me align with the business in a better way. From an executive level and a performance, I'm looking at the business and going, right, well, I've got the right people on the bus. They're all going in the same direction because I'm motivating them in the right way. We're effective because we can get them up and running really quickly and efficiently. And overall, I have a leadership team who knows how to performance manage and develop them as we go forward. So the business performs better, the employee experience is much smoother, and you're giving opportunity to the right people as you go forward.
Simon Noble, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom today. It's been excellent. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
So yeah, I'm Simon Noble. You can see me on LinkedIn. You can find it through the Cezanne HR LinkedIn page, or you can go to cezannehr.com and take a look at what we're up to.
Okay. Thank you so much, Simon. Appreciate you spending the time with us today. Thank you.